Alright, how's it going everybody? In this video I am going to be going over breeding in Pixelmon because a lot of people on the server seem to be sort of unaware of how the whole thing works. Breeding is a very useful thing that allows you to get stronger Pokemon, and you can also get more of a certain Pokemon for trading with other people if you want. To start off, you need 2 Pokemon in compatible egg groups. And I'm going to leave a link in the description to all the different egg groups, and you could just Google a Pokemon and figure out which egg group it's in, but both of them have to be in the same egg group, and not all Pokemon can breed. Like, for example, legendary Pokemon cannot breed, even though they're all in the same egg group. They're in what's called the undiscovered egg group, and so any Pokemon in the undiscovered egg group cannot breed. Then there's also some Pokemon that are genderless, but still in an egg group that's not undiscovered. They can breed, but they only can breed with Ditto. Okay, so we're gonna start. We're gonna look at my PC here, and I've got a whole bunch of boxes. So let me see if I can find something that we can start breeding. Like, well, obviously, if they're the same Pokemon, you can breed them. Okay, here's an example. So I was breeding my Gible with Magikarps, and that's because they're both in the Dragon Egg group, so you can actually do that. I was able to breed my female Magikarp with my male Gible. The female parent is what will determine what the child parent will be. So you can breed a female Magikarp with a male Gible, and it'll always produce Magikarps, as you can see. Obviously, if they're both the same Pokemon, they'll produce the same Pokemon, because that doesn't make any sense why they wouldn't. Unless, of course, it's Ditto. If you breed 2 Dittos together, you get a random Pokemon entirely. Okay, so there's some Pokemon like Porygon here. You can see when I hover over it, it doesn't actually have a gender, so you need to breed that with Ditto, like I said earlier, in order to actually breed it. And if you do breed it with Ditto, they don't have a gender, so doesn't really matter, you'll just always get Porygons. Male Pokemon only can pass down their ability if you're breeding them with Ditto. They have a 20% chance of passing down their ability if you breed them with a Ditto. Otherwise, the female has an 80% chance to pass down its ability. Okay, so that's abilities done. We should probably go over how you breed in the first place. So what you need is a ranch block. I got one right here, and the crafting recipe goes like this. You just take a piston, a PC, and a flower pot. I'm assuming you know how to make all those things if you're looking at this guide, because those are pretty beginner. I mean, these 2 are vanilla items, and this is a beginner item that you should have by now anyways. So you can go ahead and make a ranch block. When you place it down, you'll notice that all these little squares pop up. So this is the area that your ranch block has to breed with. And you can see it's a 9x9. Now there is ways to expand this, but I'll get into that later. And you can right click on it and you can put Pokemon in it. So you can put 2, so like let's say for example, I can put these 2 in it and they'll start breeding if they have the correct environment. Okay, so Pokemon need the correct environment to actually start breeding. So you can see I've got all these Pokemon, they're on different blocks. So like these 2 are bug Pokemon, so they like flower pots. So you have to put flower pots everywhere for them to actually be able to breed. These guys are water Pokemon, so they like lily pads. So I have lily pads in there. Eevees are normal type, so fence posts work. Cakes also work, but they're kind of really hard to get in Pixelmon. So I have fence posts here. And I'll leave a link in the description for a wiki page where you can find which type of Pokemon like which type of blocks, and then you can use those in your build. Okay, so here, I don't actually have access to this because this is my friend's ranch block anyways, but I can at least explain this. So see how we have half and half blocks here, and this piston was I was just trying to see if you could pick up cakes with a piston, because you can't pick them up with Silph Touch. There's half and half blocks here because we were breeding Ditto with Togekiss. Apparently somebody bought an Elytra from my store. That's cool. We were breeding Ditto with Togekiss, and Togekiss is a fairy flying. So these blocks are dispensers and flying type like dispensers, and then both fairy and normal type being Ditto like cakes. So we have half and half here. you need to get your Pokemon to a certain number of points for them to actually start breeding. That's where the environments comes into play. So you actually have to make sure it's the right environment, because if it is the wrong environment, they will not breed. Okay, so on the wiki, you'll notice that certain blocks have different values. For example, cakes are, for normal type Pokemon, are a value of 3, whereas fences are only a value of 2. So you need to keep that in mind. So that obviously means that if you have cakes here, it'll be much faster to breed than if you have just fences. However, in this case, since these are both only normal type Pokemon, fences is just fine. Because the way it works is a Pokemon that is dual typed actually has their number cut in half. So Scyther is bug and flying. So if you just filled up the entire thing with flower pots, you would do 3 times, I believe, 80, and then you have to divide that number by 2 because Scyther is a dual type Pokemon. Let's say you're breeding the same Pokemon. Let's say you're breeding Scyther and Scyther, but it's a monotype Pokemon. I mean, a dual type Pokemon. So you would have 100. You'd have 80 blocks free for them to roam around on because it's a 9x9, but the middle one takes up one of the slots. So yeah, all those little squares count towards it. So you would have 80 flower pots in the area. I have more than 80 here, but that's because I've expanded this ranch. 80 times 3, because flower pots are worth 3, is 240. And then you would have to half that because Scyther has 2 different types. So you'd get a number of 120. And that number 120 is how comfortable Scyther is in this environment. Which means if you look at the chart, and I'll have that'll be the same pages where you find all the environments and what Pokemon like what blocks. It has a little chart at the top of the page that tells you how long it's going to take. So for example, 120 falls within the strength 1.5 category, which is 105 to 139, which means this Pokemon will take 50 minutes to breed. Which is not bad. It's the second fastest stage. If you get your number over 139, then it takes 37.5 minutes to breed. Now, mine is currently over 139 because I've expanded this with a thing called ranch upgrades. These things right here. And you can get these from bosses. But basically what you can do, I'm not actually going to expand this. I'm going to cancel it. You can right click on the ranch to upgrade it. And you can go in any direction here, and it'll just add an extra row. So like this will come out to right here instead, if I expanded it in that direction. And that allows you to put more of the block that the Pokemon likes in the area so that you can make it breed a lot faster. The next thing that we're going to take a look at, now that we've looked at how you actually breed and what blocks the Pokemon likes, and just doing a little bit of math to figure out how fast it's going to go, the next thing we're going to look at is IVs, because that's kind of the whole point of breeding Pokemon in the first place, except for having a bunch more to trade. But if you just want them for trading, then you're pretty much done with the video here. You don't have to watch anything else. You know how to breed, and you can start breeding a whole bunch of Pokemon and have a bunch of spares for trading with your friends. But if you're here for the competitive side of it, you're going to want to keep watching. Okay, so we've got all these items in this chest here. You don't need this many of them. I just happen to have this many of them. You really only need one of each. It helps if you have more than one of each because you can breed multiple things at a time, but you don't necessarily need more than one of each. These can also be obtained from boss towers, just like the ranch upgrade. They're quite a bit more common though, so you'll find all of these pretty easily. So we'll get into the Destiny Knot and the Everstone later. Let me tell you about how all these power items work first. So if you go into, let me go into my box here and let me find, let's say for example, we'll take this Cleffa here, or Clefairy. So this one I've already breeded. It's already got perfect stats. It's got 31s across the board. But if I wanted to breed this with another Pokemon, let's say I want to breed this with, I don't know, for example, well, actually, I was trying to get Sylveon, so I was going to breed it with Dedenne first because the DNA is part of the fairy and the field egg group, which means I can breed this with Clefairy first and then breed it with Eevee after. So if I were to breed this with Dedenne, let's say, for example, I don't actually know what the stats are on this, but Sylveon is a special attacker. So obviously, if it's a special attacker, it's not going to use any physical attacks. So the attack stat you really don't care about. That can be anything. So this Clefairy is actually perfect because I don't actually care about the attack stat. It does not matter. These 4 stats over here, the defense, HP, special defense, and speed, you want those to always be 31. However, the attack and special attack, they don't necessarily both need to be 31 if your Pokemon is only using physical or special moves. In some cases, it's different, but most of the time, you only need one or the other. Okay, so you can see how my Clefairy has a lot of 31s here, and those are good. So let's say I want to breed this with Dedenne. Let's say, I don't know what the stats are on it, but let's say I want to guarantee that Dedenne has 31 speed. Well, the Power Anklet is great for that. What you want to do is just give Clefairy here a Power Anklet, and that means when you breed it with Dedenne, it'll be guaranteed to carry over the Speed Eevee, or Speed Ivy from Clefairy, which means that the offspring of the Dedenne and the Clefairy with the Power Anklet will have a guaranteed 31 for its Speed Ivy. The way that parents pass down their IVs to their children is by default, they pass down 3 IVs, 2 from one parent and 1 from another parent, and then the other 3 are just completely random. Doing it this way with the power items is great because it means you have a guaranteed 31. What you want to start by doing is finding 2 different Pokemon, each having a stat that you want to keep. So let's say, for example, I don't actually know what the stats are on this Dedenne, but let's just make the assumption, let's just pretend, for example, that this Dedenne had 31 for its HP. So I would put a power weight on the Dedenne, and when I breed these 2 together, we would have a guaranteed 31 speed from the Clefairy, and then a guaranteed 31 HP for from the Dedenne. So the offspring would have 2 perfect stats right off the bat. Once you actually get the offspring, let's say, so in this case it'll be a Dedenne that we're going to get because we're breeding the female Dedenne with the male Clefairy. Once you actually get the offspring, it will have 31 speed and 31 HP. So what you want to do is you want to switch the power weight over to the new Dedenne, which has 2 perfect stats. Okay, so once you've bred your Clefairy with your Dedenne, or I guess whatever Pokemon you're using, doesn't have to be specifically these 2, you'll have a, in this case it'll be a Dedenne because Dedenne is the female, and you'll have that, and it'll have 2 perfect stats. It'll have perfect HP and it'll have perfect speed. So what you want to do next is find a different Pokemon that can breed with Dedenne with a different perfect stat. Let's say we find a Pokemon with a perfect special attack stat. So now we would put a special attack power item, which is the Power Lens, on that Pokemon with the perfect special attack stat, and then we would breed that with the Dedenne that we just bred, and we would move over the power weight, or whichever stat we really cared about the most, to that Dedenne. And now we have a good shot at breeding a 3rd perfect stat, because what happens is it'll guarantee the stat that Dedenne is holding, it'll guarantee the stat that in this case, Clefairy is holding, and the Dedenne also has another perfect stat, so there's a chance that it'll pass that down. So you keep breeding until it passes that down, and then you have a Pokemon with 3 perfect stats. And once you get to a certain point, the Destiny Knot comes into play. So what the Destiny Knot does is, I told you before that Pokemon pass down 3 stats, 2 from one parent and 1 from another parent. The Destiny Knot makes it so that they pass down 5 stats instead. So with the Destiny Knot, you're passing down 2 from one parent and 3 from another parent, which is great, because if you have quite a few perfect stats, instead of using a power item, you can use a Destiny Knot, and then you'll carry over a lot of perfect stats. Okay, so for example, we have here, not all these are perfect, but we've got a lot of good stats here. So if we use a Destiny Knot, we would guarantee, if we bred this Meryl with this Clefairy that has a whole bunch of perfect stats, we would have a really good shot at guaranteeing that the offspring has quite a few good stats as well. because it would pass down 5 of them, so it would only randomize one of the stats. So you keep going with that until you get all the stats that you want. And the last item we have on the list is the Everstone. Now, the Everstone is great because what it allows you to do is it'll pass down the nature on the Pokemon. So, for example, if you want a timid nature on whatever offspring it is, let's say, for example, I think Togekiss likes a timid nature, if I'm not mistaken. So if you're breeding a Togekiss with a Clefairy, then you want to put an Everstone on this Clefairy here, and then you'll probably want after you breed a bunch of good stats, you'll put a Destiny Knot on the Togekiss, and you'll put an Everstone on the Clefairy. And so that means every Pokemon that you breed is going to have a timid nature, as long as this Clefairy has an Everstone, which is great. That way you can actually get the correct nature, because natures are very important, as you may well know. Alright, I think that's about it. I feel like there was something else I wanted to cover in this video, but I don't remember what it was. So that's basically how to breed. You just have to be patient with it. It'll certainly take some time. But essentially you just use the power items to guarantee that you get good stats, and then you use the Destiny Knot to guarantee more stats, and then you use the Everstone to guarantee your nature, and bada bing, bada boom, you've got a really competitive Pokemon. But yeah, that's about it. Thanks for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Hit the subscribe button. It would really help me out, and I'll see you in the next one.